A very dangerous weather pattern will be coming to the United States over the next few days, which will bring the threat for extreme heat across the Great Plains, the Midwest, and back through the Southeast. Additionally, more significant severe weather will be possible today and tomorrow across the Central and Northern Plains, the Midwest, and the Ohio Valley. And then lastly, the tropics are quickly heating up, and we could have our first big hurricane of the entire year in just a couple of weeks. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days. And we'll begin with what's happening across the country today. And we are coming off of a very active day of severe weather back over North Dakota and Montana. This right here is the remnants of a line of thunderstorms that brought significant damaging winds across nearly the entire state last night. Damaging winds between 60 to 85 miles per hour happened, and there were also a couple of tornado warnings. This is all coming from a low pressure system that is spinning right now over Montana. Tons of energy, a lot of wind shear as well in this area, which basically means our winds are changing directions, which is actually going to help to build a tornado threat today for some of you that live in the Midwest and the Northern Plains. But on top of that, we have tons of moisture still surging out of the Gulf, which is making it basically a very favorable environment for this time of the year, especially for there to be severe weather back over in the Midwest and the Northern Plains. Back along the East Coast, not really a whole lot to talk about right now. We got some scattered showers and storms. That's been a trend over the last few days. But back over in the Atlantic Ocean, we do have a very low chance that a tropical depression or storm could form over the next couple of days from this area of moisture. This will eventually track to the northeast and should be moving away from the United States. And if we do get a tropical storm, very minor impacts are expected to the country. So over the next few days, we have a very different weather pattern that will be developing, and this is going to come with multiple different threats, one of which is a major heat wave, more significant severe weather, and then we're also watching for the potential for tropical storms and hurricanes. So this is what it looks like right now across the United States with our mid-level flow. We currently have a low pressure system, which is actually pretty intense back over in the far northern plains. This can help to increase our threat of severe weather today and tomorrow across the northern plains, the Midwest, and also through the central plains. Lots of wind shear, especially for this time of the year as well. By the end of the weekend and early next week, our jet stream is going to become more zonal again, which will basically mean that we're not going to be looking at much in the way of significant severe weather to begin next week. But I do think by the middle and end of next week, we could see troughing developing again back over in the Rockies, which may promote the potential for a few more severe weather events in those same exact areas that we've been talking about for several weeks now. So definitely an active stretch of weather will continue. And then after that, look at this right here. This is the GFS model looking out to about August 20th, which keep in mind that's 12 days from now. Things are definitely going to change, but it is showing signs that we could start to see our first tropical activity near the United States. But I do want to point out that forecasting tropical storms and hurricanes beyond 10 days out is nearly impossible with today's technology. So keep in mind that even though the GFS model is showing this big hurricane hitting Florida on August 20th, the odds of this exact scenario happening are basically zero. So definitely something still that we need to keep an eye on, because I do think tropical activity will increase and we could see our first tropical storm or hurricane impacting the United States sometime around the middle or end of August. But this is obviously something that we do not know if it's going to happen or when it is going to happen as of now. Now, one thing that this weather pattern is definitely going to bring is dangerous and extreme heat to areas like the Great Plains and the Midwest. This is what it looks like today for our temperature anomalies. We have a very warm pocket of air that is currently sitting around and just east there of Denver, Colorado, and this is going to bring some extreme heat, and the potential for record-breaking high temperatures are also on the table. The good news is that extreme heat will simmer down a little bit this weekend. So Saturday, Sunday, if you have outdoor plans, still be monitoring the weather very closely, as it will still be very warm, but it will not be nearly as warm, as a little bit of cold air will start to make its way out of Canada and over the Rockies from that low pressure system that is sitting all the way back over in Canada. And then by next week, we're going to have a balance of above and below average temperatures through the early to mid portion of next week. And then another heat wave is likely as we approach the end of next week, and we could be talking about more extreme heat across the Great Plains. And sometimes when we get this mixing of cold and warm air, this sometimes can lead to more significant and more elevated risks of severe weather. So that'll be something that we are going to be keeping a close eye on in the long term. But at least for now, these are the high temperatures that are forecasted for today, which is Friday. Most areas will be in the 100s. We'll have some areas in the 110s, including Omaha, Nebraska, also back over near Kearney, Nebraska, even back over in the Southwest. We could have some areas near 120 degrees. And for the record, yesterday in Phoenix, Arizona hit 118 degrees, which is the hottest day on record in the month of August for Phoenix, which is very crazy. As we go into Saturday and Sunday, temperatures will start to relieve themselves just a little bit. Most areas still in the 100s 100s though, and then by early next week most of us will be back into the 90s. The only 100s will be mostly back over along the west coast and also into Arizona. And then by the middle and end of next week, notice how that heat returns back into the 100s from Texas all the way back up into North Dakota. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next few days, beginning with today, which is Friday, and we have a slight risk of severe weather in place for the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Marginal threat goes all the way back into the Texas Panhandle, also into the upper peninsula of Michigan. All hazards of severe weather are going to be on the table today, including the risk of significant damaging winds, which will be scattered to numerous at times across parts of Minnesota. I wouldn't be surprised in a future outlook if we got a small enhanced risk of severe weather for damaging winds in central Minnesota. If you don't remember, we actually did have an enhanced risk of severe weather for Minnesota in our outlook from yesterday morning, but they did remove that yesterday afternoon. So we'll see if they add it back. I think they might. We'll have to wait and see though. Large hail is also a possibility across Minnesota and the Dakotas, and notice how we now have a 5% tornado risk in place, which does include western Minnesota. About 500,000 people are included in that, and then a 2% tornado risk that does encompass areas like the Twin Cities, most of Minnesota in fact, including Duluth, and then also into northwest Wisconsin just outside of Eau Claire in Wisconsin. And on Saturday, the threat of severe weather continues across the Midwest and also back into the high plains. If you're back over in the Midwest, we do have a slight risk of severe weather for Wisconsin and Iowa, marginal threat that goes into Kansas City, and also another marginal threat near Denver, Colorado, where damaging winds and large hail are the main concerns. I do think there will at least be a low tornado risk. Back over in Colorado, they have outlined a small 2% tornado risk. I also wouldn't be surprised if they add one in a future outlook to include Iowa, Wisconsin, and also southeastern Minnesota. There's a chance that will be live later today with severe weather coverage, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and there's also a low chance tomorrow that we are live on this channel, so click the bell icon so you're notified if and when we do go live for severe weather coverage. On Sunday, we have another marginal threat of severe weather, which is mainly around Kansas City, just north of St. Louis, where some isolated damaging winds and hail will be possible. Now let's talk more about the timing of severe weather, beginning with today, which we're not expecting a whole lot this morning, just some elevated storms that are out there, basically the remnants from our line of storms last night. As we approach 4 to 5 o'clock this afternoon, that is when we're watching this general area for storm initiation back over in eastern North and South Dakota and western Minnesota, where a few supercells will try to fire off. This should be near sunset. I think around 6 to 8 o'clock is really going to be the time frame to keep an eye out for some big hail and wind storms, and there's also a potential for a few tornadoes out of these storms as well. By 10 o'clock, these storms will continue to fire up across western Minnesota with large hail, damaging winds, and a few tornadoes being possible. We should have a full-blown line of storms as we approach the late evening hours, going in the direction of Duluth, also going towards the Twin Cities, and then into the overnight hours, this moves across Wisconsin. A few more storms are also possible in central northern Iowa and just south of the Twin Cities as we head into early Saturday morning before all of these storms start to push a bit further to the east into the Midwest. And then back over in the Midwest, we are expecting some severe weather on Saturday. This is going to be a really conditional risk of severe weather across the board. The environment is actually going to be quite favorable for severe weather, but all the storms that are going to be going on throughout the morning from what's going to basically be happening today across the Midwest will play a factor, because all the showers and storms are basically going to play a role in stabilizing our atmosphere across the Midwest, including Iowa and Wisconsin. So if we have a lot of rain out there during the morning and early afternoon, we may struggle to actually see legitimate severe weather occur. But the HRRR model at least shows a couple of storms firing off sometime during the mid to late afternoon and early evening with large hail, damaging winds, and a low tornado risk. And then after sunset, that is when things could get a little bit more interesting with more scattered to numerous storms with mainly a threat of damaging winds and hail, not really much of a tornado risk. This is also the Rufus model kind of indicating the same sort of thing, a little bit more of an elevated threat of severe weather in Colorado Saturday afternoon and evening. But notice how it shows a ton of storms firing off just after midnight across Iowa, Illinois, and also near Kansas City. And with this particular setup, if we are to see this many storms, they will likely be slow moving, and this could not just lead to just severe weather, but major flooding would also be a concern throughout the evening and overnight hours on Saturday and into early Sunday morning. And then Sunday afternoon and evening, we're looking at just isolated severe weather just off to the north and west of St. Louis. That'll be mainly though during the morning hours. The afternoon and evening threat does not look to be that significant. And then as we go into Monday, the severe weather risk is much lower across most of the United States. Now the tropics are heating up across the Atlantic Ocean. We have currently 2 areas of development, one of which has a low chance of development just east of the Carolinas, and another one is likely going to be a fish storm. It is off to the east of the Lesser Antilles. This will make its way just to the east of Bermuda here over the next week or so. Medium chance of development there. And then eventually, as we go into next week, I do think there's at least a chance that a tropical wave coming off of Africa will have the chance of making some sort of development here back over in the western Atlantic Ocean into the Caribbean Sea. Also, perhaps a threat at some point down the road to the Greater Antilles and maybe even the United States. This is something that we're keeping a very close eye on. It's not an imminent threat, so we don't exactly know if this is going to happen, but I would give it about a 30 to 40% chance that we'll see some sort of development in that region between now all the way through August 20th or so. A lot of models have been showing these big hurricanes hitting Florida or anywhere else really in the United States, and keep in mind, any model that is showing anything over 8 days out is going to be inaccurate. There's just not enough technology to actually have those models accurate for hurricanes in particular that far in advance. So in the long term, the tropics are going to be, I think, very active over the next few weeks. We may have a fish storm or two back over here just east of the Carolinas, also back over in the central Atlantic Ocean, but this is really what I want you to pay attention to is right here. A lot of ensemble members here with the European model are currently indicating that there is some confidence that we could see a tropical storm or hurricane move towards the Greater or Lesser Antilles and perhaps even in the direction of the United States as we get closer to sometime around August 15th through August 22nd. Now, I do want to again mention that there is still low confidence in this scenario happening, but I do think that this is something we need to keep a very close eye on. Once this tropical wave actually gets into the Atlantic Ocean, we'll have a much better idea of what will be happening, but as of right now, this is just kind of something that we are kind of speculating on as of right now, at least giving you an idea that, hey, there is a possibility something will happen, but we don't exactly know when or what will happen with this wave. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We will likely have another video at some point over the next couple of days. Might not be tomorrow, it might be on Sunday, so make sure you're staying tuned to the channel. Make sure you click the bell icon so you're notified with the latest updates. There is a good chance they'll be live later today, assuming we get tornado warnings in Minnesota, so stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys all again in the next video or live stream.